Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of League Unlock. We have returned. Eric and Mark here with you guys as we look ahead to the 2026 season. And you know what? League of Legends, competitively, and the game itself has been around long enough now that we can look ahead to seasons, look at rosters, players playing, and there's really guys from two different generations, sometimes even on the same team. You got guys pushing 30, and you got guys who are still teenagers. So today we're going to be looking at the youngest and oldest players from every major region. And it's a trip down memory lane, and you get excited for the future.
And even more so compared to traditional sports, when you are examining something like an esport, like League of Legends in specific, and the amount of changes that go through, when you are talking about the ages of players and the generation gaps that we have started to have now within League of Legends, it's significant. When you look at traditional sports, absolutely moving for the different eras of a sport and players and their contributions, the styles, all those things play into it. I think that is, exploded even more so when you're talking about the game of League of Legends, the changes and periods that we've gone through. So looking back at some of the at the old talent and the young talent that is heading into the scene, I think it's always an important thing to keep track of as we move into a new year. We turn that 2025 to 2026, a good time to take stock and check in on our players.
And we'll start with some of the old heads in the LCS. Not doing any favors of getting rid of the stigma of being the retirement home for some of these pro players. Not one, not two, but three guys pushing 30. And of course, these are trio of icons within the LCS. We're talking Impact, Huhi, and the oldest player in the LCS, which I think most people probably could have guessed coming into this year, is old Captain America, Core JJ, rocking in at 31. It's nice to see a little 1994 birth date. It makes Mark and I feel a little more grounded.
Yeah, nice to see some familiar territory, right? When we're talking about those birth years and looking through in the LCS. No question, the retirement home of all the regions around because of our age at this point. But again, as some old heads like us, happy to see some of these names sticking around and some of the experience, some of the knowledge of the game and the changes that it has gone through. That type of presence, that type of veteran status, I think is something that, not on top of retirement home memes and everything else, can actually bring that value to the Rift. And when you're talking about those three players, you absolutely are looking at past experiences and everything else to come through and be part of that value that you bring to your starting position.
And I know probably all three of these guys you're saying had a down year, looking for a rebound, maybe getting some washed allegations thrown their way. But a guy like Core JJ, he's had such high highs within the LCS, and with a kind of revamped Team Liquid lineup, I'm excited to see him, not that he needs to reprove himself, but have a bounce back year again with Yon in the bot lane. Impact and Huhi both on this new Sentinels roster, so very much so going with a certain type of constructing roster where the Sentinels, with two guys being 30.
Playing it safe is the way I view it with the Sentinels. Kind of reminds me a little bit like, we're having in Formula One racing, we're having Cadillac join the grid and they're bringing in two experienced drivers to be their guys. That kind of feels like it with Sentinels. Yes, I know it's a bigger, you got three other players on this roster, and yes, they're not the old heads that are coming through like these two. But I think, again, bringing that type of experience, that value is going to be there for a team going through all the new things that you're going to, as the Sentinels will this year. And again, just one of these ones where I think that it's an important thing to keep track of. Man, doing this list 2-3 years ago, you would have had the conversations about players being washed around age 25, 26 or so. We're talking about full-on into the 30s. We are absolutely expanding what would have seemed like the professional career for a lot of these guys. And I think, again, none of them are going to be counted on as being the guy, the thing, that bounce-back performance compared to the past year of why your team is going to have success. But I would not discount that any of these guys are going to play an important role within their teams and have avenues to be the shining star.
The other side of the spectrum in the LCS, when you're looking at the youngest player or players heading into 2026, look no further than really this entire FlyQuest roster, which is far and away the youngest roster in the league for 2026, and I believe the youngest roster ever assembled in the history of the LCS. When you got a guy like Masu, who's only 1 year removed from being that Rookie of the Year, kind of being the veteran on this lineup, or one of them with Quad, and the youngest of this youth core is obviously Gakos, who we saw make his debut. And don't let that 18 years old fool you. My man's birthday was like the first week of January, so he's barely 18 years old heading into this year.
Yeah, that one's very much so going to be counting, at least for this first split, kind of viewing him as a 17-year-old as opposed to 18. I think we'll get to later in the year, counting it through. But yes, this is the youngest roster, and I think that youth, change for this FlyQuest team is going to be part of that excitement heading into this year, right? Seeing how Gakos is going to do, Griffin in the jungle as well. That's always going to be those parts, as well as looking at players like Quad and Masu, who are both still young players, but are now expected to take another step forward, add a little bit more responsibility to your plate as the leaders, as those veterans, as experienced members for this FlyQuest squad. That is absolutely going to be a significant difference for this team than where they were last year with Bwippo and Inspired really running that show and everything else there. So I think, again, going to be that uncertainty for this FlyQuest squad. But as far as experiments, changes that we are seeing within the LCS, rolling the dice on all of this young talent is, I think, an exciting opportunity for the FlyQuest organization.
Yeah, and we touched on it a bit with so much unproven talent on the squad. They become very difficult to rank because you don't know who's going to be stepping in and kind of leading this squad. You're anticipating Quad and Masu to be the ones to do that, but Griffin is obviously a very vocal guy, and if you've followed Griffin's career trajectory, despite not playing, making his Tier 1 debut in the CBLOL last year, this guy's been talked about for a long time. He hit Challenger when he was like 13 years old, and this guy started playing League when he was 8 years old, Mark, and now he is making his debut in the LCS.
I need to know what his parents were doing, getting him on a League of Legends at 8 years old. I didn't have that type of access on a computer back then. That is wild stuff. And I think that kind of one of the benefits of this FlyQuest roster being so young, so fresh in that regard for the most part. You are looking at a player like Griffin, who is stepping in, is one of those young members, but is extremely vocal and confident that he can jump over someone like Masu or Quad in this situation, where if they don't have that personality to be that vocal veteran leader for the team, doesn't need to be a veteran to be that vocal leader of the team when you're talking about a squad that is all young players in that type of situation. So again, more things to look at when you are looking through the dynamics of age into the retirement home of the LCS.
The easiest lock-in you could have guessed heading into doing a list or video like this is when you go to the LCK and you're going, man, I wonder who the oldest guy in the LCK is heading into this year. Ruler's 27, BDD, Cuz, they're 26. Okay, getting up there in esports years. Obviously, it's the GOAT, the grandfather, the uncle, Faker, 29, going to be turning 30 this year. And he, along with those other guys we just mentioned in the LCS, just proving that you're not washed up when you're 26 years old for esports.
Absolutely not when you're looking at what the unkillable Demon King, the 6-time, soon to be 7 possibly, who knows how many time, world champion Faker stepping into the limelight here, of course, as the old head of the LCK. No one else deserves to have been around as long as this man has been around for T1, for the LCK, leading the charge as that oldest member right now. What a journey we've been on throughout his career, going all the way back to 2013, 2014, and that type of time zone, and seeing what has become of his career and the long journey and everything on top of that we've just had, I think, this whole off season. Looking at my man doing an interview with the president of South Korea, getting an award that pretty much only gold medalists and multiple-time gold medalists are getting from Korea. This is absolutely insane stuff, and again, just keeps adding to the legacy that he has already established for himself within the esports community.
Well beyond mid laners or League of Legends players in general, this is a guy that aspiring esports athletes are looking up to, even if they're not playing this game itself. And how about on that other end, this guy could be playing until he's 40, by the way, no question. But the other end, A couple of 2007 born players who were, like 6 years old when Faker was winning that first world championship way back in 2013. But we're talking about Diablo and Siwoo, who have both already made massive impacts after their debut years.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of the most exciting young players to be talking about when you are looking at the duo that are coming through from the LCK. Of course, we've seen Siwoo a little bit with DK and what he's been able to do in Diablo. On the other side, we have seen that firepower, that talent, that raw skill that is absolutely there. I think it's just one of those situations of either waiting for him and the rest of his surrounding cast to level up and put yourself in more interesting and important situations, or eventually leaving for a different organization that is at that type of power level and that type of competition level when you're talking about what you could see from him, from Diablo specifically. But he absolutely is, I think, at the very tippity top of the young guns, of that exploding talent that you were waiting just to take that next level, that one little step further to being at that legendary status. They're pretty close to that one right away with that early stuff that we saw last year in the LCK.
And kind of further cementing the history of the LCK, no other region has younger players have a bigger impact. How many times did Siwoo save a game for D+ that they had no business winning? Yes, Diablo was a highlight reel machine, and you're already looking to build an entire squad around this guy at 18, and this has been the case for years. I mean, Zeus, when he popped on the scene, was 18. Really, that core of T1, they were all under 19 when they're making these debuts. Chovy was 17. No region has kind of churned out this young talent so early in their careers, and they've delivered.
I think there has been, yes, that willingness to try young talent, but I think it's also been that explosion and expansion from players like Faker, proving that it isn't just simply, 25 clock is done, you're an old head now. There's no way you're going to be competing with the reaction times, the raw mechanics of these young players. I think we have seen that shift even more so, and probably in the most important region for that to shift in within the LCK to set that example for everybody else. I think that is one of the important things that you can look at with Faker's longevity, and especially the excellency that he has continued with himself at that forefront as that old head of the LCK, but still looking at the willingness, the excitement within the region to take a chance, to take that gamble on these young talents that are as well deserving of one of these opportunities.
Can't wait to do this again when you're talking about the young players who were born after Faker's first world championship, and then Faker's still the oldest guy in the league.
We're only like 3 or 4 years away from something like that.
Yeah.
That is the crazy thing about a statement like that. And again, it will be one of the most incredible stories within League of Legends, as it always goes on. Anything with the unkillable Demon King Faker.
The LEC side, when you look at this, it's almost too poetic, the spectrum of the youngest and oldest players coming into this year. And surprisingly, the youngest guy is the reigning Rookie of the Year. Kalist is still the youngest guy coming in. He's got a few months on Yukino, who's going to be starting for Carmine Corp Blue, who is another NA import, by the way. But I think because Kalist, he hit the ground running so quickly, and when he won Rookie of the Year, I think a lot of people forgot that this guy was a rookie last year.
I think that's the most impressive thing about it, is not only is he still the youngest player, but that he was able to put up the results that he did last year as an even younger guy in that situation, even more so behind what is the established age and experience that you had gone through for these European players. For Kalist to come through and deliver that last year, yes, the excitement is even more so for this year. And I think part of that is, again, his own development, but even more so the changes that have come through for Carmine Corp and who he's going to be paired alongside that bottom lane with our boy, FlyQuest Busio. No, that's not FlyQuest Busio. That's Carmine Corp. That's EU Blue Busio down there in the bottom lane now with Kalist. I think that is going to be one of the most exciting pairings. And I think Busio still, again, a very young player in his own regard, but does have a lot of experience as well, kind of in a similar vein to Kalist, picking up that young experience early on. I think that is going to be something that he can bring to his new young bot lane partner, and the experiences that he's had with FlyQuest and all those rosters and everything else. Very much so. Excited about him. But, again, you say that poetic perfection that we have here in the LEC, talking about an ADC down at the very youngest points. You can go all the way to the top point with Reckless and look at the age that we have here in the LEC.
Yeah, it's, one bot lane prodigy that Kaliste is to absolutely what Reckless was. And I mean, I still remember when he was making his debut as the youngest guy, was too young to even be qualified for some of these tournaments. But here we are now, 29 years young, pushing 30. Obviously now he's support, but he will be back to the LEC for the first time since 2023 with Los Bretones in that LEC versus, and the career trajectory for Reckless is one of the most interesting in esports. You know, to kind of have this redemptionist support, goes to T1 Academy, comes to Los Bretones, and now here he is as not just a veteran, but we've seen him be the shot caller for Cadril squad.
I'm biased because I think this has been the most exciting, most kind of noteworthy type of trip that you've had throughout his career when you're looking at Reckless and everything that went through the LEC, the time away, and now with Los Bretones and what we have had. Would have been a shame if you turn back a couple of those years and it was that deciding point of whether he was going to leave LEC and go to North America, join a TSM at the time type of thing. What a nightmare that would have been. In this
That's
situation.
a bad timeline that Reckless will be happy to have avoided.
I think everyone happy to have avoided that one, and we are talking about him now. Yes, making that return to the LEC stage with Los Bretones, very much so. Excited for the opportunity that he's going to have with this squad and what that will represent, but just getting him back in the LEC scene, I think as a whole is going to be an exciting thing. And you know what? Some of his friends, not too far behind in the age category when you're talking about him, former G2 teammate members, maybe not the best of times type of thing, but absolutely when you are looking at these players, looking at Wonder and Mickey still within the LEC, happy to see them here. And I think for specifically Wonder to get the opportunity that he's going to get right now, and I think is one of those ones that is very much so scratching on untapped potential, because it felt like a waste last year not to have him in the scene. So having him back here at that top in Europe, very excited.
And Wonder basically straight up saying he probably wouldn't have had a job if not for Mickey kind of getting the keys to the SK Gaming car and wanting to play alongside him on that top side. And listen, even right behind those two at 27, Caps and Hans Sama are both 26, which was maybe the most mind-blowing thing for me, is that these guys who were such hyped rookies.
The Hans Sama one is even crazier for me, and I think that's almost maybe just a personal bias type of situation. I'm paying attention because, again, Caps, we are talking about the guy that we all along, baby faker, all these things, caps, claps, craps, we've been through it all with him. We've seen him have a full set of hair to balding now in this type of situation. We've been through it all with our man Caps. Crazy that he isn't the oldest head within the LEC, because he almost seems like it, because he's always there in your attention because of the success that G2 has been able to have.
Yeah, and I think, Hans Sama just stole all the good hair genes out at G2 ever since he joined. He's sucked the power right out of Caps.
He's too pretty. He just looks still too handsome, too young, too youthful for me to count him in towards that older category of our LEC pros. But you're right. You look at the track record, you look at that experience, certainly climbing up there in the list.
Lastly, we look at LPL and LCP kind of as a combined thing, but LPL first because, again, it's less poetic than what you have in the LEC, but having the reigning Rookie of the Year from the League Awards in Hong Q coming over to the LPL, who, again, much like Kaliste, you forget he was a rookie because of how good of a 2025 season this guy had. Now going over to the LPL with JD Gaming, who just came up short in the Demacia Cup finals, but going opposite the guy who's named Rookie, who is anything but that, and even you throw in Zhao, who the two kind of old guard LPL mid laners, but Rookie has a legit decade over Hong Q, who he's going to be matching up against many times in that mid lane.
And that is just flat out something that you don't see even in traditional sports all that often, is to see a full decade of season results ahead of you when you're talking about who could be there on the other side of the rift. Just what it takes to be a contending member of an LPL squad, right? What you have to go through. Hong Q, important to remember, my guy was 17 last year throughout the majority of the year with the things that we're seeing. Guy didn't turn 18 until July. We're getting MSI type of territory in that time, turning 18. So absolutely still very impressed with what he did last year in the LCP, and to see him get the opportunity now with JDG that made it all the way to the finals of the Demacia Cup. Faltering in those finals, yes, but still very much so getting there, and as much and as little as we take away from the Demacia Cup, excited by what we have seen so early for him with JDG, one of the youngest players in the LPL, and as you said, a decade plus type of gap when you move up towards rookie on the full other end of the spectrum in the LPL. I think only the LPL can quite deliver differences like that, given what we have there.
And we'll maybe have to revamp this list when B inevitably comes out of retirement again, maybe for split 2 in the LPL, right?
Always looking on some type of angle. My boy B, you can never rule him out. Yes, the LPL and the LCP as a whole combined type of situation is absolutely one of those ones. And the LCP kind of gets lumped in there a bit because of the connection with Hong Q and that type of transfer over.
Yeah, and truthfully, it's a lot harder to find specific ages for a lot of the young guys in the LCP, and they're kind of given the opportunity less often that young, which is why Hongkyu is such a surprise and one-of story. A lot of the guys are more, early 20s, kind of making their debuts as rookie. But we do have to give a shout-out to some of the older guys in the LCP, because anytime we got somebody around 30 years old, we got to highlight them. And how about Evie, still in the top lane, still for those SoftBank Hawks, that old LJL squad. Evie, Mr. Thumbs Up, Mr. Always Smiling, just happy to see him still playing games competitively.
Sometimes when you're talking about a veteran player, you're always looking at what angles can you now add? Can this old dog learn a new trick type of situation? Evie is excluded from that. You don't need any new tricks. You've got the tricks. You have your trick book. Just read it. Read it to the class, and let's enjoy the storytelling. That's kind of how I feel about Evie, and absolutely what he brings to the top side. As you mentioned, of course, Mr. Thumbs Up. We love that around here. But yes, continuing his journey through the LJL, and I'm sure we'll see him be talked about eventually at some point as we get towards these international competitions.
And who knows, the Flying Oysters roster kind of blowing up. Maybe the LJL as a whole had a forgettable year in the LCP last year, but maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to kind of step in, fill the shoes, or at least push this new CFO roster and be tested a little more, and maybe, I don't know, deny one of these many perfect runs through the regular season and playoffs that we've now seen for almost going on 2 years out of the Flying Oysters. But young and old, it doesn't matter. You're going to see both ends of the spectrum, both guys that we've talked about on this list, pop off in 2026. But that is it today for Liga Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.